let's go ahead and move on to the Houthis because we haven't talked about them for a while. But meanwhile, Houthi action is ongoing with regard to attacking ships in the shipping lanes to try to, put pressure in order to hopefully eventually end Israel's onslaught onto Gaza, which doesn't seem to be moving in the right direction. News Nation actually did an interesting report talking about how significant a threat they've been, how effective they've been, as well as take a listen to what they found.
The message from the United States Navy is clear. The whole world is underestimating these Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen. They say that they are capable, they are well armed, and what is currently happening in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden is unprecedented and unlike anything they've seen before. How legitimate are their capabilities?
Yeah, I think people undersell the Houthis' capability. This anti-ship ballistic missile is a game changer.
They're a legitimate terrorist organization, and they conduct attacks almost daily out here.
The Houthis have captured a ship, they have sunk a ship, they have also killed 3 sailors here in this region.
They've got a lot of advanced weaponry that they've purchased or been delivered from their friends in Iran, and they have no problem using it.
I think our objective is to save lives, to put it very simply.
So we just saw what's behind this door, which is the Combat Information Center. From the second that one of those missiles is fired at this ship, there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. How to intercept, where to intercept, what kind of tools to be used. All of those decisions, in some cases, have to be made in a matter of seconds. You know that there are very legitimate adversaries that are on the ground. What goes through your mind?
I'd try to pretty much just think about the mission itself. Launching into the pitch black night at like 2 a.m., going in there knowing that we were the tip of the spear in the case.
You have nearly 5,000 souls aboard here. What keeps you up at night?
I'll tell you this. I keep the Houthis up at night.
So appreciate News Nation doing that report because here we are in an ongoing multi-month-long hot war, effectively with the Houthis, and it gets very little coverage, and it does pose grave risk to our service members, and also comes at a great cost. Saagar, we tried to look for how much we've spent on this, and we have some dated numbers here, which tells you how much interest most of the press has taken in this. You can put this up on the screen. This is from back in April. We had already spent $1 billion in munitions, by the way, not even counting, the cost of this mobilization, countering the Houthi attacks. So, yet another source of money, of risk, of potential escalation that all stems from our inability to exert any influence. I shouldn't say inability, our unwillingness to exert any influence vis-a-vis Israel.
Yes, it also, that's $1 billion just in munitions. There's actually appropriated 2.4 extra billion just to cover the cost of replacing munitions. One issue I have with this is that just seems like you can snap your fingers and these munitions can just be replaced. This is extremely valuable technology, which we are learning in the Ukraine conflict takes years to reproduce as a result of the dead industrial base here in the United States. So every time that we are firing a missile, basically on behalf of the Israelis, we are taking one away from ourselves that could be used in a conflict which is actually relevant to our interests. So it's over $1 billion. By the way, the cost is approximately $1.5 million per day to run the USS Eisenhower, approximately. So just do the math. It's been out there for, what, couple hundred days? Well, that's couple $100 million. You got to pay and think about all the maintenance costs, and you got to think about the opportunity cost too of its deployment versus maybe somewhere else. You can see here, we're basically paying for this entire aircraft carrier, which is designed to protect U.S. commerce on the high seas, to protect another nation as it carries out another war. Americans should ask questions about that. Is that worth it? Do you think that it's worth paying for that? Do you think it's worth putting people in the position where they could potentially be hit by an anti-ship missile if your son or daughter works or is an enlisted member of the U.S. Navy? I would say no. I don't think that's worth it at all. But nobody ever gets to have this conversation. Like you said, the press, News Nation, good for them. They at least went out there. What else do you notice about the News Nation interview too? There's a high level of concern by the dudes on those ship and the women as well. They're like, this is not gone away. They're like, we're in this shit every single day and it's not good. And sure, we've won so far, but they only need to win once for it to be a major asymmetric victory. Just don't forget about that. Props to them, and they're being put in a tough position. But that's my thing, is that the policy leaders here in Washington don't ask any questions about this. They just assume it's fine, blank check. Let's not even think about what it looks like. And then if something bad happens in the future, maybe we could talk about it then.
I mean, it just is such a representation of how we are this, floundering, overextended empire led by a feeble old man who is bumbling from one self-made crisis of weakness to another. And, meanwhile, it's not only the political leaders that don't really seem to ask any questions, with very few exceptions. It's also, in fact, they just further this direction. They embrace it wholeheartedly. It's also the press that, this is a rare report that we've seen on what is even going on here at this point. So, that serves to help keep the public in the dark. And nonetheless, in spite of those efforts, you still see the public very unhappy with the direction of our unconditional support of Israel. Certainly Biden's base, as we covered before, having a lot of issues with the direction, and an overall sentiment of there's always money for more munitions to bomb the Houthis and protect Israel. There's always money to ship to Ukraine. And there's never any interest in actually delivering for us here at home. At the same time, as I was mentioning, the lawmakers who are just, totally invested in this direction, with only a few very notable and, brave dissenters at this point, we have yet another push for some sort of codifying anti-Semitism censorship bill. This one coming directly from Hakeem Jeffries, who, of course, the leader of the Democrats in the House. He's calling for passage of the, quote, Countering Anti-Semitism Act. And Michael Tracy, who does such a great job of digging into these bills and highlighting what they mean, he says this bill would create a new national coordinator to counter anti-Semitism within the executive office of the president to, among other things, quote, counter the spread of anti-Semitism online, i.e., he says, government coerced censorship, including to impose, and this is the language from the bill, accountability for individuals. So Hakeem Jeffries, who I'm sure has probably blanket support among the Republicans in the House as well, and overwhelming majority support from the Democrats, looking to once again take further steps to directly codify censorship when it comes to their definition of quote unquote anti-Semitism. And we already know, Saagar, because we've covered the definition that they're using here, it effectively bans criticism of the Israeli government and smears those who would be critical as being anti-Semites.
Yeah, scary stuff, very scary, especially whenever you combine it, with what's happening. Let's go to the next part, because what we see here, and this was surprising, it says for the first time since 1972, the NDAA would automatically register all males age 18 to 26 for selective service in the military. So for the past 52 years, you're actually required to register on your own, but compliance reportedly had been lagging in terms of selective service. They're switching it to automatic registration, presumably after significant pressure from the military. You read into that what you will. I'm not going to say it's some grand conspiracy or whatever, but we start to get a little nervous anytime we start to see things like this and be like, hey, what's going on? Why? And I can tell you why, which is that enlistment right now is at an all-time low in the U.S. military. Young people do not want to enlist. They do not agree either with foreign policy, or they think the incentives are not even close to where they were, or, and honestly, this is sad, but most people are just way too fat to join the military and not physically fit. So you have a combination. It's like a polycrisis. And it's not me saying this. You can ask any individual service and look at their reports to Congress about enlistment. What do? Well, you start to put pressure for selective service. And let's just say the last time that we saw this in the 1960s, it didn't go so well. We'll see how it works out.
Saagar, you'll love this. It was a Democrat who was sort of leading this charge to get this into the NDAA. And by the way, there isn't the expectation is that the Senate has other issues with the NDAA, not necessarily this one, but there's an expectation they're not going to take up this bill, just to be clear. But you'll love this. Democrat who is pushing this uses social justice language To justify it, she says this will allow us to rededicate resources, basically that means money, towards readiness and mobilization rather than towards education and advertising campaigns driven to register people. And she says it will ensure any future military draft is fair and equitable.
Oh, good. Yes, that's exactly right. That's what we need. We need an equitable draft. I mean,
That's right, yes.
if we're going to have a draft, I'm in favor of an equitable draft, but I'd rather just have no draft.
We just
but yeah,
not have a draft? How about that one? It's just
all right.
Incredible. You can't make it up, as you said.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.